I think it's about time we add another installment to the 2020 game review series. Week 13 was total madness. So many close games, 3 of which ended up being reverse sweeps. Not gonna lie. At first, at least at the beginning, I thought I was destined to review that madness that was Shanghai versus New York. But after what the Valiant pulled off, I knew there was no other game to spend time looking at this week. As good as NYXL versus Dragons was, we expected that game to be like that. We knew it would be close. Valiant versus Reign, on the other hand, was expected to be pretty one-sided in favor of Atlanta. Not only was this game shocking, but there were a lot of interesting aspects to look at. Looking at how the Valiant pulled this off is something that needs to happen, since this was, in my opinion, the biggest upset of the weekend. Let's not waste any more time though, let's begin. To start, let's discuss the lineups. What we need to take notice of here is that both Apply and Fried, otherwise known as FRD, are making their Season 3 debuts. Now for Lijiang Tower to start, the Valiant would use Orisa Rein with Apply on Echo, although they would swap over to D.Va later on. Meanwhile, the Reign were running Rein D.Va with Sharp on Reaper plus Erster on Mei. And the first fight was super long, and that might be right away signaling that this game could be closer than we thought, and the Valiant even capped the point once, but Reign were looking like the superior team in the end. So, after round 1, while there were some unexpected twists and turns here and there, the Reign were still out in front like most people predicted. Now then for round 2. So both teams opted in for what was fairly standard over the weekend. Winston D.Va with Tracer Echo Brig. The Valiant, I have to say though, looked a lot more in their comfort zone this round. Dreamer looked way more enabled on the Winston, and the dives looked clean and coordinated from the team overall. Also, this is where Shaxx begins what would end up being a fantastic day for him. Once again, he shows that contrary to popular belief, he is not a Sombra one-trick and is indeed a premier Tracer player in the league. Now then, round 2 of Lijiang appears to be pretty Valiant favored overall. But as a side note, can we point out the fact that near the end of the round, we had 4 Winstons in play at once? It was absolute chaos, and I loved every second of it. Eventually, towards the end of the round, the Reign would get control of the point, but the moment they did, Pokpo kind of just fell off the map for some reason. I really don't know why it happened, but it did. And then the next thing you know, the Valiant take advantage of a 6v5, and Shaxx cleans it up to win them the round. Now for round 3. So this time the Reign would break out a different strategy. They decided to play Monkey Zarya while using a Reaper to help mitigate the effectiveness of Dreamer's Winston. Early on though, the Valiant took advantage of better healing thanks to having a Moira instead of Ana like on the side of Atlanta. Another thing I noticed early on was that FRD was struggling to get Grav. He failed to get value out of bubbles, so he was stuck with relatively low charge for a while. Once he finally got his first Grav though, the Reign never looked back. Eventually, the Valiant attempted to counterswap with Mei Deathball after struggling for a bit, and towards the end of the round, they charged up a Blizzard in time before it ended. They even found 2 picks off of it, but it still wasn't enough. Pokpo carries with solid Winston play, and thanks to some help from Erster and FRD, Atlanta turns it back in their favor and takes a closely contested Lijiang Tower. Next up is Hollywood, and it's substitution time. Edison subs in for Erster, and this would remain for the rest of the series. Seeing Edison and Sharp together is something I never thought we'd see since they specialize in the same roles. So now then, to start Hollywood, the Reign decide to break out a Winston Zarya comp on their defense. Meanwhile, the Valiant stick with the same standard composition. And to start this map, the Valiant proved Lijiang was no fluke with a quick first point cap, but then they kind of just got stalled out in the streets phase for a very long time. But right when things looked dire, the Valiant came in clutch to get through the streets entirely in the end. In what could have been the final attack of that fight, Atlanta were up by quite a few bodies, but Reign and Lastra managed to clutch it with their powerful support ultimates. Finding a kill plus a long enough stall allowed for their teammates to come back from respawns and clean the rest up. And in the end, that led to the Valiant overpowering the Reign and finishing the map in overtime. For part 2 of Hollywood, the Reign still wanted to run the same comp, while the Valiant chose to use a Reaper this time around, but unfortunately, this swap did absolutely nothing to start. Apply got picked first, and it opened up the point for the Reign after a prolonged first fight. Then the next thing you know, we hit the streets phase, where the Sharp takeover would commence. The Sticky Bomb connections plus the Winston transformations were on point. He got so much value out of that Primal Rage. The Valiant didn't get much time to breathe. The Reign pretty much never stopped moving that cart. Sharp could not be stopped. He had a complete read over Apply, and as a result, the Reign would finish with 2 minutes 27 seconds in the time bank, so the Valiant would not be getting a second attack, which means that the Reign only needed a tick to win the map. As a result, the Valiant tried to do this desperation counterdive comp with Orisa, Sigma, and Ashe, but it did them no good. Instantly, they got forced off high ground and needed to rotate into the cafe. After that, the rain forced them into a corner, and it was pretty easy pickings after that, as Atlanta would take a commanding 2-0 lead. Here are my halftime takeaways. So to start, the Valiant are doing much better than expected. Winston dive comps are starting to look like their best composition we've seen from them this year. Even in those lost maps, Shaxx was a man possessed. He put in so much work on that Tracer and Reaper. More than holding your own against Erster and Edison is no easy feat, and it goes to show just how deadly he can truly be. With how close those two maps were, the Valiant had a legit shot of getting back into the series. It didn't seem likely right now, but it was definitely possible if they made the right adjustments. As for the Reign, they did show some signs of weakness, but there were also some strong points. They were clutching out major fights, while Pokepo and Sharp were putting in the work. Look at Sharp in the Echo battle with Apply in particular. The halftime stats favor Sharp by a pretty noticeable margin, averaging nearly twice as many final blows, 2,000 more damage, and 3 less deaths per 10 minutes is just crazy. And during that second map, their strange Zarya comp that no one else was using that weekend was starting to look stronger and stronger. Now it's time for Hanamura, and we have another substitution. KSP in for Apply. It would seem that the Valiant came to the conclusion at halftime that they just can't compete with the Reign on Echo, so they attempted to throw them off by not using her at all, instead opting for Tracer Ashe heading into their defense on round 1. And right away, it had at least some impact on what the Reign were thinking. The Reign were forced to respect that Ashe and deny the value she gets with Dynamite by playing Diva, even though they were looking pretty comfortable on the Zarya. At first, nothing appeared to have changed. The Reign did cap the point pretty quick and even appeared to be in prime position to snowball and finish the map with a ton of time left, but the Valiant defense would end up holding strong as their DPS found picks over time. The Reign even committed both support ultimates and didn't get anything out of it in the end. Now it suddenly looked good for the Valiant to stabilize for the time being, and now KSP starts to make his presence truly be felt. He finds pick after pick and takes full advantage of this being arguably the best point in the game for Ashe. Eventually though, the Reign broke through, but their time bank was greatly diminished. The situation could have been a lot worse for Los Angeles, but patience and composure put them in a very manageable position. And now, as the two teams would swap sides, the Reign interestingly enough played Zarya even though they were well aware that the Valiant want to play Ashe. During the first fight now, the Reign would end up going up by 1, killing KSP, but during the chaos, Shaxx takes out Sharp out of the equation, then him plus Lastro make some big plays to secure the point with over 5 minutes left in the time bank. Next, the Valiant played their cards right on Section B and immediately got 86% on the next fight. Throwing in Bob for some additional point presence proved to be quite beneficial. Now Atlanta are forced to commit Grav plus support ults just to stabilize. After another failed push, the Valiant used their superior ultimate economy plus an extra body in Bob to finish the map with a better time bank. With both teams completing the map, we now head into extra rounds. Atlanta had a worse time bank, so they were up first, and sadly, their second attack fails to gain any traction as they end up getting full held. KSP got pocketed and he just dismantled the opposition. So now the Valiant can draw at worst, but they know they've got the Reign lost now. Shaxx sneaks around the point and assassinates Sharp, which then forced Atlanta to withdraw and contest the point. Next thing you know, LA collapses on them and the damage dealers do the rest as the Valiant get their first point on the board. Suddenly, because of this one substitution, the Valiant are showing major signs of life. The Reign appear to be on the back foot despite that map being pretty close. The Ashe swap is proven to be problematic and the Reign need to regroup quickly to try and stop the momentum from shifting out of their favor completely. Transitioning into Toronto, the Valiant are looking to continue their second half resurgence on attack, and they do so in a big way. They do the classic Orisa Hog out of spawn door strat, and the Reign just don't see it coming as Pokepo gets picked off, giving the Valiant lots of free cart progress. You gotta give it up to the Valiant for successfully realizing that the Reign were holding close on the left high ground. After that, the Reign got rolled on their second attempt to stop the cart on Section A. The Valiant got their first point of Dorado with an absurd time bank. After losing all that progress, the Reign would make an interesting adjustment. They decided to play the Valiant's game and not use Echo either. To counter the dive, they would play Sharp on Sombra. But guess what? It does absolutely nothing on the Streets phase and the Valiant just coast right through it. On point C though, the Valiant would finally start to stall out for a while. But even so, the Sombra proves to be utterly useless other than the fact that he made KSP swap over to Reaper. The few EMPs he got were of little help. Even when he EMP'd the whole Valiant team, his team got killed right when he pressed Q, so there was no follow-up whatsoever. While they did hold on for a good amount of time, the Valiant would finish the map, which is always a good thing since it's such a tough map to complete. Now it was Atlanta's turn to respond. To start, They go with Sombra Tracer again, and at first they appear to be on good pace that could even match the Valiant. But then the Valiant activate Clutch God mode for some reason with a big nano onto KSP, and soon after that, the Reign looked like they were in good position yet again to get first point, but McGravy comes up big with 2 kills, and a rally from Reign plus a pulse bomb for good measure allows for them to stand tall yet again. And sadly, Sharp even committed an EMP during that fight, and they still lost anyway. Eventually, the Reign would break through that Valiant defense and stop them from full holding them, but now unfortunately, they needed to play perfectly just to have a good shot of finishing the map. But then the Valiant stalled them for quite a bit. Between Shaxx getting a double with his pulse bomb and Dreamer wreaking havoc on the backline, the Reign now only had 1 minute and 30 seconds to push through the final part of the map. Then, out of nowhere, the Valiant make a weird swap. KSP goes on to Soldier 76 of all characters, and at first, it kind of felt like a throw, but it worked out just fine in the end. In Point C, the Reign had 2 really quick attacks to start, and they got denied both times, which meant that they had to push the cart the rest of the way through in overtime, but lucky for them, they had a win condition and EMP available. All they had to do was land a big one, and there was still a chance to finish this map and put the series out of reach for good. But unfortunately for Atlanta, Sharp chokes and connects with absolutely no one. This in turn forces the other Reign players to try and clutch it out with their ultimates, and at first it does look winnable, I have to say. But then, KSP's TAC Visor secured the kills needed to win the map for the Valiant and tie the series up at 2. It feels weird having Visor kills in the kill feed, but that's when this ultimate is actually useful. It's one of the better cleanup ultimates in the game. At this point, the Valiant are very clearly in the driver's seat. The Reign are panicking. The counterplay of the Valiant is something they just can't properly make adjustments for. The Sombra swap ended up failing miserably. Sharp, who was doing so great on the Echo early on in the series, was now suddenly the weak link on the team. That whiffed EMP at the end was the major turning point in the series. I can only imagine how differently that fight could have played out, as well as the rest of the map, if that EMP was properly executed. The Reign could have finished the map and ended that series right there and then potentially. I can't even describe with words how big that one moment proved to be. That's the play everybody's going to be looking at. It was the biggest what-if scenario of this game without a doubt. Such a pivotal moment that may have been the final dagger that sealed Atlanta's fate. Now it's do or die. The Reign are looking to come back from a tough loss against Philly in a game that looks very winnable against the Valiant. Meanwhile, Los Angeles are looking to keep pace in the playoff race after losing quite a few games in a row as of late. Now coming into Busan Mecha Base, the Valiant kept doing what was giving their enemies so much trouble, and the Reign made the decision to go back to what was working earlier in the series. Just go back to Winston Zarya Echo stuff and see what happens. The counter swaps were not worth it, so you might as well try what found you success again. But as we all know, that did not change anything. In fact, they were looking even more lost now. The Valiant got the point first, and they never gave it up. KSP, Shaxx, and Dreamer continued to be a menace. The Reign couldn't break through, no matter how hard they tried, and I think that almost broke their mental in a way. FRD literally threw out this random cross-map grab, and it did absolutely nothing. If that doesn't signal that you are boomed and desperate, then I don't know what is. Anyway, the Reign don't do much for the rest of the round, as the Valiant win Mecha Base 100-0. Now here we are at Busan Sanctuary. This was it. It all came down to this. Sanctuary needed to be big for Atlanta, or they were going to get reverse swept by a team that they have no business losing to begin with, but they certainly made sure to fight back this time. At first, it seemed like we were destined to see another one-sided round, because, Shaxx and KSP were just doing their thing, and the Reign were backed into a corner, but then, right when it mattered most, they flipped the point in overtime thanks to their supports coming in clutch with some ultimates. After that, there were some scares in the following fight, but the DPS bailed the team out even after Dogman died first. The Valiant even burned quite a few ultimates in the process. Now the next fight comes around, and Shaxx goes bananas, allowing for the Valiant to once again capture the point. But thankfully for Atlanta, Edison was in position to touch the point. But even so, the Reign had to scramble back in unorganized fashion, and things were looking pretty good for the Valiant to finish them off. Pokeball had a chance to maybe turn it around with a Primal Rage, but Lastro came up huge with a well-timed Sleep Dart and Biotic Grenade that completely took Pokeball out of the equation. It's sad too because Masa got sound barrier right after that, and it looked like it might be able to turn the tide once again as the Reign found a few last moment kills, but it just wasn't meant to be. Atlanta couldn't touch the point as overtime ticked down, and the Valiant emerged victorious in their first reverse sweep since Stage 1 of 2018. What a crazy game this was. Such an unexpected outcome. Not only did the Valiant pull off the upset, but they did so in a reverse sweep over who many consider to be one of the better teams in the Overwatch League. Here are my concluding thoughts on this game. For one, I think it's time we realize that the Reign are currently being overrated. For me personally, this was the final straw. This team had such big expectations coming into Season 3, and they've greatly disappointed me so far. Sure, they don't have a terrible record or anything, but anytime they played a really good team, they were on the losing end of it. That in itself gave me initial doubts before this game even happened, but then they lost to this struggling Valiant team in reverse sweep fashion. They had no business losing to this team that they just completely outclassed. There is no way to sugarcoat it. The Reign choked, and they choked hard. I know it may seem silly because it's just one game, but these are the types of matches you can't afford to be dropping. Losing these types of games that a good team should be winning almost all the time could end up being very costly. It could be the difference between being top 6 and top 12 come playoff time. Not only that, but it affects their chances of having good seeding in this upcoming regular season tournament, which also could be very important in deciding the outcome of the playoff race. The Reign got outplayed and outcoached over the weekend. Those guys weren't prepared for what the Valiant had planned if they were to start losing, and it shows. No amount of on-the-fly adjustments did them any good. They were in full-on panic mode. The Reign are going to be dipping in people's power rankings all over the world, and they absolutely have their work cut out for them if they want to earn all that lost respect. On the Valiant side of things, this type of win is huge for them. It keeps their slim chances of being top 12 alive, and it snaps a 4-game losing streak, I believe. That type of grit and determination can take a team a long way, and you have to give major credit to the coaches. They identified that playing the Reign's game was not going to work. Why bother playing the mirror match when you know there are more useful methods out there for you to take down your enemy? They won the mind games. Packing 10 outsmarted Sephi. This is what other struggling teams need to look at and try to replicate. If you know you stink at something, then don't bother running it all the time. If you can catch your opponent off guard while playing up to the strengths of your playmakers, then anything is possible so long as you stay confident. Before ending this video, I wanted to give a major shout out to KSP and Shax. These guys played out of their minds. They outplayed the Atlanta DPS, who are considered to be by most some of the best in the league. Right from map 1, Shax was an issue. He was lighting up the enemies with that tracer of his the whole game. And the moment he got more consistent help from a carry like KSP, it became so much easier to be a problem since the Reign had to split their focus now. Speaking of KSP, the man was a true difference maker in this series. Shax was already having a ridiculous game, but he needed some help. It felt like Applied just wasn't all that reliable at times, so putting in somebody like KSP pushed the Valiant over the top with all that damage they were outputting and their ability to secure all those kills. If you want further proof that this duo was godlike, then listen to this stat line on Busan. So Shax and KSP combined for 28 final blows on that one map alone, according to Backpat Matt, who was the stats guy at Overwatch League. That's absolutely ridiculous. When the Valiant DPS play at this kind of level, they can compete with pretty much any team that isn't like one of the top tier ones. That was a massive victory for the Valiant over the weekend, and now they have a chance to gain some serious momentum in a very winnable game against Boston next week. Keep an eye on the Valiant, ladies and gentlemen. They might be on a major resurgence. And that's pretty much all I've got for you on this one. So with that said, if you enjoyed today's review and you'd like to see more in the future, then make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new. While you're at it, feel free to let me know what you thought of this match down in the comments section. And as always, thanks so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.